When I was watching the Mandalorian Season 2 finale, I thought that Ezra was coming down that hallway to pick up Grogu. Don't ask me why, but when they finally revealed Luke, I felt as if I won the lottery. I was perhaps too happy, but this was not only me who reacted this way. Excited, I watched the episode again, and again. And then I finally realized. I realized that my emotions were tampered with. Annoyed, I looked at the time building up Luke's eventual reveal, and it was 5 minutes long. I kid you not, it was indeed 5 minutes long, and I felt mixed at this point. I had still liked that scene, but I knew the writers, or rather, Disney's true intent behind it. Looking back at Mandalorian Season 2, the entire season kind of felt like an advertisement. We got entire episodes dedicated to characters returning. The Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, and Ahsoka reveal had me in the same reaction to Luke. I'm happy that all these characters are returning, but the characters would always get an episode dedicated to their intro, the reintroduction into the Star Wars universe. And often in these episodes, there'd be their own protagonist, or at least the most interesting character on screen. I still feel mixed. Should I feel happy knowing that it was essentially an ad, or shouldn't I? That's part of what this video will be talking about. In the beginning, I'll start off by talking about how businesses use nostalgia, then I will explain how a writer should feel about this, and finally, explain how we should feel about nostalgia as a viewer. I've set up chapters so you will be able to skip to whatever segment you find interesting. Businesses use nostalgia to hijack your brain. It's simply very easy to get money this way. If I was in charge at any film studio, I would definitely use nostalgia to do this. However, businesses do this way too often and it sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes cognitive dissonance paired with nostalgia might make the viewer like it. Watch my video on why Marvel movies are so successful for more insight on this. Link in the comment section below. When I say it doesn't work, I mean that businesses solely rely on this method. Sure, you cater to older fans, but what they should be focusing on is making new ones. It isn't sustainable to rely on older fans to continue to revisit new installations of your franchise. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, there were these movies that were made 20 years ago. The franchise name was The Matrix. The first one was a massive success, but the ones that came out afterwards weren't as good. Still, some fans liked it because at the core of all things, art is subjective. Cognitive dissonance may have been at play here as well, but it works best with a habit loop already placed in your mind. And The Matrix wasn't able to achieve that with just one movie. Now again, hypothetically speaking, after 20 or so years, they announced a fourth Matrix movie. Most of the cast isn't returning. This film doesn't look or feel like a sequel to the older movies based on the trailer, and is a very late installation. Yet, people are excited. This is all to do with memory and how it works. Some of us may not remember much about the emotions we felt years ago. Even the emotions from the worst moments of your life can sometimes be forgotten. If you were to watch the Matrix trilogy 20 years ago and haven't watched it since, you wouldn't be able to remember the emotions you felt back then. If you were, you would know that you should probably not watch this new one, or at least wait for reviews to come out. Yet the majority of people won't feel like this, as the majority usually doesn't rewatch them. It's a one and done. The only thing they remember is watching the original trilogy and the basic understanding of the emotions they felt. You would remember the joy of watching the first Matrix movie and just suppress the feelings of the other movies. Or at least, this is what most people do. This is what businesses rely on to get a quick buck at the box office. It helps them in short-term space, but it could potentially damage them in the long term. Now, how often do businesses use nostalgia in franchises? Well, that answer is clear-cut. What did Force Awakens rely on to reboot the franchise? Nostalgia. The entire movie was just a copy and paste from New Hope. What did Jurassic World rely on to reboot the franchise? Nostalgia. Even the subtlest things can have nostalgia. Learning about Batman's origin story from a comic book for the first time and watching as Bruce's parents die is horrifying. Now, experience that in a theater. Experience that for yourself. This emotion powered with a subtle hint of nostalgia can make you like it even more. Batman fighting a well of bats in The Dark Knight Returns is a parallel to how Bruce fell in Batman Begins at the start. Nolan wanted to do this because he wanted to replicate that moment in his movie, but it had the unintended action of nostalgia. If you are in any kind of franchise, nostalgia is unavoidable, but it's more or less how you use the nostalgia. This is a very difficult question to answer. Like I said before, nostalgia is unavoidable. The real question should be, should the writer in question use nostalgia on purpose, and how much should they rely on it? The writer should absolutely use nostalgia, but only in a certain way. In a story, there are multiple layers, but to bring it down to basics, there's character, plot, symbolism, story world, and theme. Theme, symbolism, and story world are icing to a well-baked cake. If the characters and plot are good, while the symbolism, story world, and theme are bad, then it doesn't affect the story that much because they are just added flavor. Looking at nostalgia, that is what it should be, icing to a well-baked cake. You can harness this energy, but only to an extent. Like I said in my business segment, you always want to bring new fans to your work and not just rely on older ones. They will eventually leave, or at least some will. Nostalgia can't last forever. Nostalgia also doesn't make a story essentially better. It's a common misconception with some people. It shouldn't be the only thing a writer relies on, because even if it gets critical reception for it being fantastic and the general audience loves it purely because of that reason, but by relying so much on nostalgia, you haven't created a good story. You've just won awards on the outside, but not on the inside, at a core level. This also doesn't apply to just writing stories. It could extend as far to music. Right now, you might be thinking, there's no way a book or a film or even a game has won awards solely because of nostalgia. And to that, I say you are wrong. Look no further than the garbage we all watched, The Rise of Skywalker. What has this movie been nominated for? It was nominated for Best Sound Editing, which is understandable, I guess. Best VFX, which also makes sense, but this last category is gonna shock you. Best Score. If you haven't realized why the score in Rise of Skywalker is so bad, then go watch Sideways' video on it, but the people in the Oscars had only one reason to nominate the mess that is the score. Because it sounded good. And even though it made no sense thematically speaking, it was still nominated because of nostalgia. John Williams originally had a proper score written for this movie, but it was cut up and chopped to parts. I don't know whose decision was this, but this was the last movie in the Skywalker saga, which means that the score would have definitely been one of the strongest in the movies. I think this itself explains how corrupt a writer's mind would be to follow in this business mindset. Sure, you can have the business mindset, but only to an extent. A business's sole reason for existing is for money, which is fine, but an artist's is not for money. Sure, they want to make money off of their artistic things, but the main reason they make it is because, 1, they enjoy making it, and 2, they want others to enjoy it. Without this, I don't know if a person could be called an artist. So, in summary, the writer can use nostalgia, but don't ever rely on it to make a good story. Should you, the viewer, feel happy or mad if a film, book, or other uses nostalgia to manipulate your emotions? This is the hardest question I've had to answer in this video by far, and took me a couple days to solve this. On one hand, if you stay ignorant of the business's strategy and just let your emotions run course, businesses will then continue to use nostalgia and pump out bad to mediocre content every year. On the other hand, by ignoring these emotions, you suppress it. You suppress the happiness you get from that, and you would be missing out. So, how should you really feel? To answer this question, let's go to the most basic question ever that is seemingly unrelated to this. In life, what do you really want? Do you want to have more money? Well, why? Do you want to be successful? Why? Do you want to spend time with your family? Why? Do you want to get that one game or console that's never available? Why? It is all to do with one factor: happiness. Most of the moments in life should be about happiness and to enjoy it as much as you can. Very preachy, I know, but essentially, this is the reason for the why of everything we do. Even survival is based on happiness. Going back to the question, I do believe that you should let your emotions run their course. Feel happy. Let nostalgia trick you into feeling that joy, and if others don't have it, well, then you have something they don't. But again, the downside to this is that businesses will continue to trick audiences, and eventually, the world will be plagued by this continuous nostalgia baiting method for a set amount of time. This is why I believe that the film should be viewed a second time. But this time, be more mindful of the nostalgia level. If a story is over-reliant on nostalgia, you'll be able to spot it quickly and realize the true glory of that story. If the story was really good or bad. This second step is a bit of a stretch, I understand, but if you want to find out more of your true thoughts about a story, and if you really care about future films, I believe that this is the way to go. Well, there you have it. In this video, I covered 3 topics: businesses and how they use nostalgia, if the writer in question should use and or be reliant on nostalgia, and finally, how we should feel about nostalgia. I will be posting weekly on Sundays. This should be the 4th video I've uploaded, and I'm still learning, so give me any feedback that you can provide. I will see you next time, and again, thank you for watching.